Yes then guys, you're locked into Rapture Recordings YouTube channel. This is Shaun Ashley, and in this video we're going to be going through the basics of music production, from the DAW you're going to pick, to the software you're going to use, to where you're going to put your speakers, to other hardware like MIDI keyboards and stuff, just everything you're going to need and the advice that you're going to need to be able to get started with music production in a good way. So join me now as we go through each individual subject that I've lined up for you and I thought would make a good basis to start with music production. So for me, first things first, we're going to pick what DAW you're going to use. So obviously a lot of people might already have some ideas in mind of which ones they want to use. But for me, obviously I went for Fruity Loops because it's easy to use. I find the workflow works really well for me. I've just learned it over the years now, and in my best advice is if you've stuck with a DAW for so long, you might as well just carry on learning it, because they all do pretty much the same thing. Obviously they all do it differently, they all have their own little sort of features and plugins that are different from others, but fundamentally they all do the same thing. So for me, what I would do, obviously there's not a lot of advice I can give apart from the fact that obviously, like I say, from my experience, Fruity Loops is very well easy to use. I've used Logic, I've used Ableton, I've used Cubase, and I've tried them all, and I've much prefer the way Fruity Loops works, for me anyway. But if I was you, I would go onto all the websites that you like the look of. So obviously from first impressions and pictures and reviews and stuff, you might already have a couple in mind. So go to their websites, download the trials and just have a play with them. It's the best thing you can do. Experience what they're like, have a go on them, see what it works for you, if the workflow's working for you, or whether or not that you're going to get on with it or not. Because that's the main thing, is you want to choose a DAW that you're going to be able to work with and be patient with, because music production takes a long time and you're going to need somewhere where you feel at home and you feel comfortable. So obviously I use Fruity Loops, so obviously this channel and all the videos I do are going to mainly be on Fruity Loops. Obviously I will try and explore other DAWs as and when I can. So the next main thing for me is obviously how you're going to be listening to the music you're making. I find that making sure you've got studio monitors or a very good pair of headphones is a very big part and a very key part of making music. As with this, I'm talking from experience, having started music production with a pair of Sony hi-fi speakers, and then I tried to combine them with a set of cinema speakers as well. I think it's got like a 7.1 sound surround system in my bedroom. It was not the best to produce on. I do not recommend producing on speakers like that. In terms of speakers, a lot of like hi-fi systems, car systems and stuff like that, they're out the factory preset with like some sort of boost or coloration in some frequency aspects to make them sound better in certain environments, i.e. like your cinema systems at home and stuff like that. So you want active studio monitors or a good pair of studio headphones. In my experience, I've never used headphones, I've always used studio monitors. I like being able to feel the music a little bit more with. I find you get that more power with an actual pair of speakers, and I find with the sort of music that we produce, it makes all the difference being able to feel it than just hear it in a pair of headphones. Obviously it's good to have a pair of headphones, and I do a lot of referencing, which we'll talk about at a later date, across different like headphones and speakers to hear how it sounds across different systems. But yeah, we'll cover that in a whole nother video at a later point. Yeah, so when it comes to entry level monitors, I could not recommend the HS7s enough by Yamaha. I've used them massively for the last 8 years. They've never let me down, although there was one time that I had to fix the cone in it, and it turns out the connector on the back of the actual speaker cone had come off, so I had to put that back on. Other than that, they've never let me down. They're a great pair of speakers for the money that you pay for them. I will leave a link in the description for a pair of Yamaha HS7s. Make sure if you want to go grab some, use the link below and go cop yourself a pair. They are honestly one of the best speakers. I'm not sponsored by Yamaha, but I'm just talking from experience. They are one of the best. So as I said earlier in the video, monitor placement was also a massive part of how you set up your speakers. Obviously you want them to form an equilateral triangle formation. As in the video here, the chair, obviously where my head would be, ends up being the same distance away from each monitor as it would be side to side to each other, so it forms an equilateral triangle formation. Another good point to take into account is obviously a lot of monitors like mine have got back facing ports. So you want to be pulling them monitors at least 2 foot away from the wall. I think I've got mine about a 1.5 foot is what I could get away with. But yeah, that's another good bit of advice for you. So the next subject I want to cover, apart from the two essential subjects I've just covered, is MIDI keyboards and MIDI controllers of and other outboard gear that you may require when music producing. These items are not essential, do you know what I mean? You can get away with producing music without any of these. You can still draw notes onto the piano roll in most DAWs these days, and you can still do most of the things you need with a mouse and a keyboard. So they're not a requirement, but I do highly recommend getting a MIDI keyboard. It makes all the difference when it comes to previewing sounds, obviously recording patterns in if you're good on the piano, which leads me on to my next subject. But yeah, no, I highly recommend getting a MIDI keyboard, even if it's a little small one, just to get you going for the time being. They'll do, you know what I mean? It's just good to have to your side. I've got one behind me here. I use it all the time just to preview sounds, and just it's ease of use. When you're scrolling through all the presets or you're looking through the sounds and samples, it's nice just to be able to go do 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 and listen to it, and just have that without having to load it in and then get the piano roll up and then go through it that way. But yeah, when it comes down to it, as long as you've got a laptop and a set of headphones or a set of speakers, you can get away with making music these days. The technology and the software that you can get hold of these days when it comes to making music is just unbelievable. Some of the software I've got now on my computer, you just beggars belief as to why you would even need hardware. But a lot of people do like having hardware because you do get that authentic hardware sound that you can't get with software. And I think that's why a lot of people hunt down old synthesizers and old bits of hardware, because they just don't make them anymore and they don't sound like that anymore. So the next subject that I want to cover, like I said about in the previous subject, is that music theory gets quite overlooked by a lot of entry-level music producers. They think they can just jump on a DAW and start making some beats and not have any understanding of how music works, how it's made, and where it will come from. I done it at school and I done it at college, so I got the necessary learning I needed for music theory through that. So if you're new to music production, I highly recommend learning about some music theory. Get on the internet, get on YouTube, have a look at some videos, make sure you cover chord progressions, scales, keys. That's the sort of basic elements you want to sort of learn, because once you've learnt them, then you can build melodies and stuff from said chord progressions. So when it comes down to it, with music theory, you want to be learning it on a piano or some sort of keyboard or something like that, so you can obviously with MIDI keyboards these days that just plug into your computer, you can control any sound. So as long as you can learn the basics of playing a piano and learn how they work, the chords and melodies and stuff, when it comes to then controlling your computer, like I have, I've got a BBC Symphony Orchestra plugin, I've got synths and everything. You know what I mean? Them same skills will relate to any synth that you use, because obviously you're playing it on your MIDI keyboard. So it's definitely worth learning how to play the piano a little bit. Even like, I'm no seasoned professional playing the piano. I'm not sure a lot of producers will be. Some are, and I've seen it, and they are wicked, but don't think that you have to be a professional piano player to be a music producer, as long as you have some understanding. So I know I said about going on the internet and looking into music theory yourself and going on YouTube and stuff, but when it comes to YouTube, I will be doing my own YouTube video when it comes down to music theory at some point, and I will go in depth. I'll go over chord progression, scales, keys, like all the stuff I said earlier, and we will get you up to date with basic music theory so you can get started on your music production journey. So in the fifth and final subject I want to cover is samples and plugins, where you're going to be getting your sounds from. So most DAWs come with their own stock plugins, which are good enough to get you started with music production in basic terms. Some of them are actually really good, and you could probably, like, I even still use some today. In terms of like the Fruity Loops stock plugins, I still use parametric EQ2 all the time. So it's definitely worthwhile still using some of the stock plugins if you can. It will save you money, and save you time. But there is loads of good other plugins out there still. So yeah, once you've got going with your music production journey, it's definitely worthwhile looking into getting some plugins and some other VSTs to help you along your journey. So when it comes down to synths, I highly recommend Serum. I don't think there's much else that you will need in terms of getting started with music production. As long as you've got the stock plugins and a bit of Serum, that will get you going. Then when it comes down to samples, it could be worth going out and buying a couple of sample packages to get you going, just so you've got a couple of resources there to look through. But for me personally, I use Splice. I highly recommend Splice. It's a $7.99 monthly payment. You get 100 credits a month, and you can download whatever the hell you want. So there's loads to select from. It's just an endless database of samples. They obviously have plugins on there that you can buy as well. That's how I got Serum, through their rent to own feature. And then they've obviously got presets for said plugins as well, so the possibilities are endless. There's loads of stuff to get you started on Splice with music production. I highly recommend it if you're just starting out. It will give you loads of resources to play with straight away. You get 100 credits a month, and I think samples are 1 credit, presets are 3 credits. So it will give you enough fun to have with some nice fresh samples. I find that Splice is good because there's always new packs added, there's always fresh sounds added, you're not always picking from the same pack. So a lot of people go on to say about how using samples isn't a good thing and you shouldn't use samples, you should always sit and design your own sounds and all that malarkey. I don't believe in that whatsoever. I use samples a lot, I use presets a lot. I mean, a lot of us are working full time, don't we? We're trying to produce around the full time jobs that we have and family life and all this. So people out there literally have full-time jobs creating these databases for you to use of samples and presets, so why not use them? These people have sat there and meticulously designed these. Like with Serum, a lot of the presets I get, I've got all the 4 macros preset up to do certain things with the synth, and it's just great. It saves you so much time and you can focus on the creative workflow of your track. Obviously I do recommend sitting down some days and trying to work out the synthesizer that you're using, i.e. Serum or whatever, and just sort of getting to grips with it, having a go yourself at making sounds, because it does help, and it does help massively when it comes to using presets if you know how the synthesizer works and what causes what to happen, because then you can manipulate the preset to how you want it to sound, or if you want it to change it in some ways, then you can do that because you understand how it works. Another subject I want to cover quickly just before we go is the fact that lots of samples out there are really good to start with. If you're having to over process samples and putting loads of plugins on them, then the sample's obviously not right to begin with. It'd probably be worth going back and having another look for the samples or presets or whatever and just finding what you want. These samples are made for a reason, to save you time, and there's no point in sitting and spending loads of time processing and overdoing it, and you'll eventually end up just completely overdoing it and it won't be what you want. So the best thing for me to recommend to you is to start off with good quality samples to begin with, and you shouldn't run into many issues there. So yeah, just wanted to do a quick brief video about music production and how to get into it, how to get yourself started, what you're going to need. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. There's plenty of content on the way. Head over to www.rapturerecordings.uk/store to check out all our merch and everything that we have available. So remember to like, comment and subscribe. Make sure you share the video with all your producer friends, and let's get this ball rolling. Thanks for watching guys, see you all soon.